his little brother had a lot in common. Both were talented actors. Both loved their country. And both loved turkey with all the fixings. Unfortunately, Ed was a staunch Republican, and his little brother a devoted Democrat. And that was not a recipe for a peaceful Thanksgiving dinner. Before the election, the brothers had bickered over everything: the economy, immigration, taxes, race relations, the future of the Supreme Court, and of course, the border. Their arguments were always heated, but always respectful. It was difficult for Ed, though, because his kid brother had been so daggone smug. Like so many in the entertainment business, he had seen the election as a fait accompli. Ed's little brother not only believed the Democrat would win, he believed victory would arrive in a landslide. All the pundits said so, all the pollsters said so, and all the media agreed. Well, on November 8th, all that went out the window. To Ed's great relief and his brother's abject horror, the Republican nominee prevailed. And now, a few weeks after the most contentious election in American history, in the midst of Thanksgiving dinner with his family, Ed was trying not to gloat. So he concentrated on his turkey, as his little brother called for an end to the Electoral College. He tried to enjoy his mother's candied yams, as his little brother bemoaned the future of the First Amendment and the fate of the Supreme Court. But when his little brother loudly predicted the end of America's democracy and proclaimed to everyone in the room that the buffoon in the Oval Office was, quote, "not my president," Ed pushed back. "The election is over," he said. "The American people have spoken, and like it or not, he is your president. Now please shut up and pass the gravy." Ed's little brother passed the gravy, but he did not shut up. He offered instead an impassioned warning against the perils of dictatorships. He implored everyone at the table to resist the coming police state and begged them to defend the Bill of Rights, lest it vanish from existence under the despot now in charge. With each new sentence, his face grew more and more flushed. His voice rose higher and higher, like a Shakespearean actor addressing the last row of a sold-out theater. "The man is a tyrant, I tell you, a tyrant, and on my honor, he will never be my president." With that, Ed's little brother leapt to his feet and stomped off, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. Ed sighed, apologized to his guests, and turned his attention back to the turkey, wondering all the while how many other Thanksgiving dinners had been spoiled by political bickering. Later, Ed would find a line in his little brother's diary that stuck with him. It read, "Fame, fame, fame. I must have it. I must have fame." Ed wondered if maybe the divide between them might have been more than political. Because even though both brothers were talented actors, only Ed was famous. It was Ed who had traveled to Europe and toured the United States. It was Ed whose name appeared on Broadway marquees. It was Ed who basked in the glow of critical reviews after playing the role of Hamlet for 100 consecutive nights. And it was Ed whose statue was erected in Gramercy Park, the first American actor to be honored in such a way. So why is Ed forgotten today? Because 5 months after ruining Thanksgiving dinner, Ed's little brother gave a performance that would shock the entertainment industry and forever upstage anything his older brother would ever do. It was only a cameo with a single line, but he delivered it with unforgettable passion. "Sic semper tyrannis," were his exact words. Thus always, to tyrants. It was a curious thing to say about a president who wanted to make America great again, unless, of course, you wanted a different kind of America, a divided America, an America where one man could legally own another man. That's why, at the end of America's long and bloody Civil War, Ed's little brother leapt onto the stage at Ford's Theater and delivered his one line, seconds after shooting a tyrant named Abraham Lincoln. That's why today we barely remember Ed, the former A-list celebrity whose name was once the toast of Broadway. A man who forever lives in the shadow of his little brother, a lesser-known talent who dreamt of fame but settled for infamy, the murderous little brother of Edwin Booth, a killer whose full name no longer bears repeating. Anyway, that's the way I heard it.
Wow. It's the only time I've never said the name of the subject of all these stories.
Boy, there's an emotional connection to that in the way that you told it that is pretty overwhelming.
Good. You know, I was talking to one of the guys who works on putting these recreations together, Tom, and he was surprised when I said I had written that in November of 2017, 1 year after Trump was elected. And I wrote it for a couple reasons, mainly because I was at a couple awkward Thanksgivings.
Wow.
And I wonder how many awkward Thanksgivings there were. There must have been. I mean, the country was just riffing at the time. I guess we still are to a degree, but the parallels, right? The parallels, if you just go down the list, it's when people say we're living in unprecedented times, I say everything old is new again.
Wow. This television broadcast that you've tuned into right now is called The Story Behind the Story. Those stories are written by Mike Rowe. Mike, you have an extraordinary talent. I think I was captivated by the quote that you chose to write in that story. Fame, 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 I must have it.
Right. I mean, look, that's not an unusual desire. It's always been there. I think maybe today it's a bit more pronounced than in days past, but I've never seen it spelled out before with such unapologetic, absolute singularity. I mean, John Wilkes Booth tells you exactly what's most important. And I wondered as I wrote it, if part of the reason he ultimately did what he did was because he didn't get what he believed he ultimately wanted. Right?
When you connected fame, 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 I must have it, and then came back to that at the end and said, but settled for infamy.
Right.
Mike, come on.
That's not bad. Right?
Come on. That is one of the reasons we're all sitting here and unpacking these stories because, listen, you're self-appointed, you're not a good sermon person, no. You're not a good lecturer, but storyteller you are. This one goes deep. Here's the fun question. Is there a lesson for today?
At the risk of lecturing and sermonizing? Maybe. Again, the reason I wrote most of these was just to blow off some steam.
Yeah.
Press some time. It was good for my own mental health. The pushback I got on this one was not insignificant. I put it out on right around Election Day, a year after Trump was elected, and a lot of people, not a lot, but people who heard it the first time thought it was a love letter to the president. And it really wasn't. It was really a love letter to fractured families.
Wow.
And an attempt to say, look, if you think the immigration crisis is a thing today, well, you're right, it is. But in 1865, we had a border issue back then too. Okay? It was a big one. And so every headline, every argument, every worry that I saw that was being directed toward the administration in 2017 rhymed, in some cases, almost identically with what was being said in 1864 and 1865. And so the Thanksgiving dinner back then couldn't have been much better. I mean, the Thanksgiving dinner back then, there were families where brothers were fighting against brother. And so, again, it's just one of those attempts to say, yeah, things are a little uncertain right now. But that doesn't mean we're living in the most divided time ever. That means we're living. That means we're living in a country that is constantly gazing into its own navel, constantly trying to figure out what it wants to be when it grows up, right? America, in many cases, is one chronic identity crisis. And we're having one now, but it's not the only one we've had. We've had a bunch. So that's why I put it out when I did, just to say, history rhymes, and everything old is new again. And I'll stand by that.